Well, Liam Neeson certainly had an eventful day at work in this movie. Hi, I'm Danny Quinn, and welcome to another episode of First Impressions. On today's episode, Liam Neeson's train ride home takes an unexpected detour in the Commuter. The plot of this movie is that an insurance salesman, Michael McCauley, played by Liam Neeson, is taking the train home from work when a mysterious woman, played by Vera Farmiga, approaches him and tells him to find someone on the train who, in her own words, doesn't belong. As he attempts to uncover the identity of the hidden passenger, McCauley soon finds himself caught in a deadly conspiracy that could have severe consequences for everyone aboard the train. This movie is the fourth collaboration between Liam Neeson and Huame Colette Serra, who both previously worked together on Unknown, Non-Stop, and Run All Night. And looking at his filmography, Serra tends to specialise mainly in high-concept thrillers. Movies with fairly simple hooks, but a lot of twists, turns, intrigues and excitement to keep you on your toes. And this movie is very much in the same mould as their previous collaborations. And The Commuter is a very formulaic film, but that doesn't necessarily make it bad. Indeed, the film starts out quite well. It doesn't rush immediately into the action, but it also doesn't drag it out so slowly to the point that you're just sitting around waiting for something to happen. It hits that nice little spot in the middle somewhere. The movie takes its time setting up McCauley as a character that you do want to get behind, especially in the opening montage, which shows how routine-oriented and how structured his life is, right before it's inevitably shaken up by the events of the film. He's fired from his job, he's trying to pay his son's college fees, he feels like a believable protagonist and somebody that viewers can identify with. The train setting is used effectively as well, providing a genuine feeling of claustrophobia and entrapment that brings to mind stuff like Speed, The Rock, and especially Die Hard. In fact, this movie really feels like one of those Die Hard clones that came out in the late 80s and early 90s, but if it did, it'd probably be one of the better examples of the genre, mainly because it does seem to understand what made Die Hard a classic, and it does replicate that template fairly well within its tight setting. And the sense of entrapment is further accentuated by Serra's directing. It's not a particularly unrelenting movie, it's not quite as white-knuckle as something like Dunkirk, but the suspense is still there, especially in the action. There's some really well done set pieces, particularly one involving Neeson hanging underneath a train, and a very brutal fight scene that's done in one take. That's definitely one of the main highlights of the movie. But what does kind of let the movie down in areas is that there are a lot of scenes that feel like they're obviously green screened, and that did take me out of the movie on a couple of occasions. Another thing that does really elevate the movie is the performances. Liam Neeson is generally very reliable when it comes to these stock, generic action movies. The Taken movies, The Grey, and all of his previous collaborations with Serra are definitely good examples of that. And this movie is no exception. He gives a very likeable performance in the lead role, and he's well complemented by the supporting cast who are all fairly solid too. Sam Neill, Patrick Wilson, Vera Farmiga and Jonathan Banks, they all do a very good job, but they don't really get that much to do aside from maybe Farmiga and Wilson to a certain extent. But even then, they're largely background players. The movie is largely focused on Neeson. While the film does start out quite strong and is very intriguing up to a certain point, it does kind of go a little bit off the rails in its second half. Most of the movie is set on the train, and outside of a few scenes and a few moments where Macaulay's on the phone with someone, you never really see what happens outside of the train. And that does get very frustrating, especially when Macaulay's family are inevitably involved in the story and get wrapped up in this whole conspiracy. And that takes place pretty much entirely off screen. I think they could have cut back to them every once in a while to show what was happening to them. Although considering how that's resolved, maybe that's why their role in the story plays out entirely off screen. And the film's ending is a mixed bag to say the least. On the one hand, the spectacle stuff is absolutely absurd. It's downright laughable, and the CGI in this part of the film is something that wouldn't feel out of place in a direct-to-video movie from 2007. And it doesn't help that certain aspects of the plot feel like they're wrapped up way too quickly, especially the film's ending, which just sort of feels like an alternate ending on the Blu-ray that somehow snuck its way back into the film. But on the other hand, the actual climax itself is still pretty riveting, and I do like the way that certain reveals are handled, even if they are a little bit predictable. Bottom line, The Commuter is a very by-the-numbers movie, but it's done surprisingly well. The directing is solid, the acting's great, there's some good thrills and suspense, and the film does manage to make use of its premise fairly well, but it's let down by a messy third act and a rushed ending that wraps things up maybe a little too neatly. So on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being absolute irredeemable shit, and 10 being an outstanding flawless masterpiece, I'm gonna give The Commuter a strong 6 out of 10. I do recommend seeing it if you're just looking for a lightweight, disposable thriller, or you're a big Liam Neeson fan, or both. And I know it's not exactly saying much, but considering its generic plot and its January release, the film is relatively above average. So The Commuter, have you seen it yet? If so, what did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back soon with more videos, including new reviews and possibly my year-end list for 2017. But in the meantime, feel free to like the video, leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. If there's anything I can do to improve my presentation, do let me know. I'd be happy to hear. I can also be found by Facebook, Twitter, email and Instagram, as well as Patreon. And until next time, I'm Danny Quinn, and I hope you have a pleasant evening.